CCAN action members. Oh, there we go. So we want to build, a semi-autonomous CCAN action member team of 3 to 7 people in the various communities that we're working in, that are working to build power and to take on local climate justice campaigns and CCAN priority campaigns. So, however, in order to get there, we need to train our volunteers on the tactics we need to do base building and outreach and to create a stronger, tighter knit community. So in other words, as the participant guide highlights on page 12 regarding the 5 key organizing practices, so one, that we need to create a shared story as CCAN activists, organizers, and volunteers, and then 2, to develop a shared relational commitment to one another, not just to our CCAN friends. So public narrative is a leadership practice. So it's a way to connect the core elements of leadership practice. So your story, why we must act now, your strategy, or how can we act now, and your action, what must we do to act now. Our public narrative helps all of us interpret each other in a way that, sorry, totally lost my train of thought. So our public narrative helps all of us interpret each other in a way that we should change and why we should change the world. So how do we use public narrative? The skill is extremely helpful for a number of things, including doing one-on-one relationship building and outreach. So helping to educate and recruit our friends, family members, and other community members to get involved in a way that's meaningful to them and into the climate justice fight. 2, you want to be a storyteller in many different forms to advocate for communities and issues that you care about. It could be for writing an LTE, a blog post, doing a social media video, or speaking in front of a crowd. Being able to effectively tell your own story, the story of your community, and the story of the challenge that you are facing right now can be really helpful for having a high impact meeting with elected officials. And then 4, building action teams, which we hope you will work with organizers to do. So being able to model and then inviting folks to share their own stories and having experiences that enable you to develop a story of us and a shared commitment to each other is critical in building a sustainable team. We've all been in a meeting where we didn't know the clear purpose, or we didn't feel like we had a clear purpose or know what we were going to do next, and we didn't really feel connected to the people in that meeting. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And I will pass it to Naomi with what is a story of now.
Thanks, Hadley. Yeah, this visual is amazing. So the story of now describes an urgent choice faced by us, so the people in this room at these lovely seats, whom you hope to mobilize to act. So it's a challenging vision of what will happen if we do not act, a hopeful vision of what could be if we do act, and or what we necessarily need to avoid the worst of the climate crisis, and a call to commit to the action required. A story of now makes the bridge from the story, why we should act, to the strategy, how we can act effectively. So, as an example, in Washington, D.C., August 23rd, 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King told a story of what he called the fierce urgency of now. Although we recall his vision of what America could be, his dream, we often forget that action was urgent because of the nightmare of racial oppression, the result of white America's failure to make good on its promissory note to African Americans. This debt, he argued, could no longer be postponed. If we did not act now, we could never realize the dream. In a story of now, story and strategy overlap because a key element in hope is a strategy, a credible vision of how to get from here to there. And a key element in strategy is a source of hope, a sense of possibility. The choice we offer must be more than we must all choose to be better people, or choose to do any one of these 53 things, or go to X website and click. A meaningful choice requires action that we can take now, action that we can take together, and an outcome that we can achieve. So before we move on to the next slide and talk about narrative structure, I'm wondering if anyone can remind me what the 3 components for the story of self-structure were. You can feel free to raise your hand or come off mute.
challenge, choice, and outcome.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. Because of this formatting, I have no idea who said that, but I appreciate you. Yeah, that's from the story of self, and we apply the same framework to the story of now. So in the story of now, we conceive it as the challenge is what we're facing now through real stories, not just statistics, an outcome, what plausible pathway to action looks like, what the sense of the possible is, and what could be if we act now, and a choice, again, a choice to commit to that pathway to action that each person in our group can make right now. As you see, the order can be a little different than how we framed it in the story of self, but the elements are consistent. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mustafa to walk us through an example of story of now.
Great. Thank you so much, Naomi. So in a second, we're gonna play the snippet here. As Naomi was talking about Dr. Martin Luther King's speech at the March on Washington in 1963. We're actually going to use a clip of the speech as an example of the story of now. As a reminder, he talks about in the first part of his speech the nightmare. And Naomi reminded us of that, but really it's his own experience, the experience of Black Americans across the country. And the call for the significant motivation for this march was both to be addressing racial justice and economic justice. This march led to the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and also actually led to the passage, and I think in 1965, of the Fair Employment Practices Clause, to basically mitigate discrimination based on protected classes. So we're going to take a moment to watch this clip, and then we're going to discuss it for a couple minutes. So let's go ahead and play it.
Okay, let me know if you can or can't hear this. I may have to do a different thing to share audio. We're good?
Can't hear the sound.
Okay. Okay, ready?
Yep.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Okay, Xander, we can pause it there. Great, thank you. So that's a snippet of the speech and even a snippet of the story of now. But I think it's a really great, it's a great piece that it's cut from the story of now. So how does the clip begin? Where does he begin? I think actually we can might be able to go to the next slide here, Xander, too. The discussion.
I am happy to.
I'm sorry, I decided to change videos. It should say MLK on the slide. My apologies.
Okay.
Where does MLK begin? Pam, you go right ahead. I believe you are muted.
My headphones aren't working.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is exactly the first thing he says, but that I have a dream, that he pulls you into this very kind of evocative, hopeful stance. And one of the things I thought was kind of amazing was how he does that. And then he immediately talks about all the things that have to be done, including going to jail. So I thought like that he does both, this incredibly almost, this incredibly sort of hopeful and like almost utopian, and then he makes very clear like what we got to do to get there, which I thought was really powerful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then what do you think what's the challenge that he's addressing in the story of now?
Lack of freedom.
Lack of freedom
of African Americans in the United States.
Yeah.
Long history of bigotry and slavery, and that they're trying to change.
Yeah. Where does he, like, what does he say that gets to that point? He gives a lot of visuals, right? And even this is a cut up of it. There's like a litany in the full speech. If you listen to it, there's a litany of a whole list of examples of the challenges of segregation and discrimination, both which sort of preface the clip here, but also he leans into the examples of, as I think Pam you were talking about, where he's leaning in both to the challenge and the hope and the dream at the same time. So he talks about the 4 kids being judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. It's like he's splicing the challenge and the outcome that he's seeking. Any other places where folks see him talking about the challenge and the outcome?
I see that he does it in a very poetic way and not in a threatening way. I mean, he's a fabulous orator and preacher, and he's coming from the heart. And I think I understand that was not his prepared speech. Was it Hella Jackson who yelled out, or who was on the stage and said, "Martin, tell him about the dream," and that's where he started that.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that he's speaking clearly from the heart and from experience.
Yeah, totally.
And he's drawing in everybody, because he names all the different groups that were all segregated from one another.
Yeah,
the different
absolutely.
religious groups as well as racial groups that were at that time were all segregated from one another and talking about them being together. So so he's like naming everything, but in such a poetic way that it's
Mhm.
not a threatening, you know, like he's not attacking, he's just putting it out there in a way that is just absolutely like spirit inspired.
Yeah, yeah. The last thing I want to say about that in terms of the choice, he says we must have faith and we got to pray together. We got to go to jail together. He's giving the choice, mixing sort of the choice and the strategy within one breath. And I love that somebody wrote in the chat that he had them clapping. Kate wrote he had them clapping, right? That's like the moment of consent of like buying into this. Like, yeah, we're gonna do this thing. We're gonna do this right now. Great. So let's go ahead to the next thing.
That's me. We just want to take a quick break and talk through some reminders to set the stage as we do another video review. So what you've heard over the past couple weeks and with this video are the stories of self, the stories of us, and the story of now. All together, those three combined are we call the public narrative. So the public narrative combines those stories for a reason, because they all inform the actions that we take. Crafting together these stories allows us to find the links between yourself, why you're called to this mission to act on climate, why we as a community are acting together in the values that we share, and what our mission and those values call us to do right now. Another thing that we want to highlight is that you contain multitudes. You have so many stories, and something that we want to clarify is that you will apply these stories as you have conversations and build the movement. As you continue to practice, you will have a story for your reason for talking about climate that may be about your kids. You may have a story that's about an ecosystem you love, and you'll continue to hone and apply these stories as they come up in your organizing. And this kind of foregrounds my last point, which is the storytelling takes practice. The goal today is not to leave with the final script of your public narrative and then put you in front of a megaphone next week. That'd be very fun. But the goal is in our workshop today, we'll craft the public narrative to get practice linking these elements together. You will have a concrete story to draft to work on at the end, but the goal is not to get your greatest oratory published, polished thing by the end of this. It's to practice how we link these and how we move folks to action. So think about those things as you go through the public narrative video right now, and then as we practice this in our breakouts.
Great. Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm going to want to share with you all this public narrative example. So this is a linked narrative, as Xander said, and this is from one of the students of Professor Marshall Gans, who's also does a lot of training on public narrative. So meet Mong.
It was an afternoon on a bright sunny day. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, and a village man shouted, "Run, run, military is coming." I was only 7. I ran to my parents, and who were following a long line of villagers fleeing into jungle. We climbed up and down the hills, stopping only to catch our breath. Then I looked back. I saw our entire village is burning in flames. I kept asking, why someone is burning down our homes, and why no one in the world is helping us. I didn't know it then. Our tribe was the target of a brutal military campaign. I was born in a nomadic mountain tribe in the remote villages of Chittagong Hill Tracts near the border of Bangladesh and Burma. When I was 9, I witnessed my own uncle gunned down by the military. When I was trembling in fear, My mother pulled us aside to the corner and said, I must get out of this hell. When I asked how, she said, education was the only way out. I do not know what education meant to you when you were 9, but for me, education meant I won't end up shot dead like my uncle. Education enabled me to get admission in the University of Hawaii in the US. And because of that, I was able to flee war zone and receive political asylum in the US. Education is my passport to life. In 2005, I went back home to see my ailing mother. It was humiliating to see our villagers are working as a day laborer for the people who stole their homes and their lands. I also met a little boy, Ongsi, 7 years old, aloof, shy, and homeless. Think of what you're doing at 7, coloring pictures in your classroom or playing in your backyards. For Ongsi, both of his parents are shot dead. Instead of carrying books, he carried bricks. Instead of playing house, he cleans house for 35 cents a day. I saw scars in his face, and I imagined the scars in his heart. This is injustice. I had a second chance in life. Ongsi deserves one too. So I used my entire life saving of $63,000 and opened a school for elementary school for orphan children. Now, you may not have experienced atrocities like Ongsi, but I think we all know how it feels like to be powerless at times when all odds are stacked against us. In those darkest hours, someone, somewhere opened our eyes and gave us glimpses of hope. From our class, I remember Mary from the Divinity School, Saved from the Life in the Street, or Oscar from the Harvard Kennedy School. A mentor helped him to break the cycle from the gang-infested neighborhood. Through education, we can open eyes, give hope, and save life for children like Ongsi too. Today, Ongsi is in the 5th grade in our school, and he dreams to be a teacher someday. But after 5th grade, he has nowhere to go. I used my entire life saving to build the elementary school. So I urge you to join me to build a secondary school. For Ongsi, the time is now. We cannot wait, and Ongsi cannot wait. We need to raise $10,000 to build classrooms. Between Harvard Kennedy School and Graduate School of Education combined, we have 1,600 students. And we all only need to donate $7 each to build that school. 2 Harvard schools can come together to build one school for orphan children. Imagine what a powerful message it sends to the world. This is not a charity. What we do here today is empowering people to serve their communities for generations to come. If you believe as I do, a child doesn't have to grow up in the same darkness as he or she was born, or it is better to light a candle than to curse darkness, I urge you to join me on November 11 at Elliott Lyman Room, Graduate School of Education, to organize a fundraising event. If our Harvard education is meant to help those who are afflicted by injustice, raise voice for those who has no voice, let us be true to that cause. Let us free these children from the shackle of child labor. And let us send a message of hope to Ongsi that he's not alone. He matters. We believe in him. We support him. And he can indeed be a teacher someday and serve his communities. Thank you very much.
Okay. So yeah, let's start off with just I would like to actually raise the question of go ahead and raise the question of what was the challenge and choice and outcome of that was included in his story. Let's start with just the story of self. What was the challenge that he faced? Oh.
His home was destroyed.
Yeah, his home was destroyed. Right, he was the target He was the target of a military campaign. His tribe, really, really scary. Really, really scary. Yeah.
Sorry. One choice that I imagine must have been challenging, but he went pretty fast over was, spending his entire life savings to build that school. I'm sure that must have been a challenging decision to make, to spend your entire life savings to help the kids that he saw back home.
Yeah, that was a really, really big choice that he made.
Yeah.
Right. Really, really big choice that he made. What was the what was the outcome? What was like the aspirational piece of his story of self? What did he say about education?
His
His
mother said it
passport.
was the way out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's the way out. Education is a passport. When did he shift to the story of us? When was he talking about?
Well, we can make that available for these children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Relating to his fellow Harvard students who would have a sense of the value of education, and maybe even to the extent that it had provided for generational wealth for their own families, to like recognize they could extend themselves in a way to this educational project.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because he kind of has like he both then starts talking about Aung Sing. So there's like this other person, that young person that's in the tribe, which sort of gives more of a full picture of the tribe. And then there also the audience, the people he's trying to organize, are the Harvard students. The Aung Sing, it like bridges, is sort of the bridge in the story here, connecting himself and us and now. But you're absolutely right. The story of us is when he's really talking about the students and times when they felt powerless. Then what's the story of now? Where does that come in?
It's that the school that he has is limited to fifth grade, and he's trying to raise money to increase the school. And he's appealing to the value of the Harvard students to work for justice and the justice of having the opportunity for education.
Right. As you said, he's got the challenge, got to raise $10,000 to build this new school. There's a choice here that the students have to make, and the outcome is that he wants Aung Sing to be able to teach and to become a teacher. So it's a great example because all these pieces are very clearly included in there. So we want to go ahead and get into our breakouts. I think we'll do a practice until probably about 7:50. So what we're going to do in the breakout is you're first going to hear from your coach about template calls to action. So I hope that you all, we know that you all have done some thinking about like what's bringing you here, what you've how you've connected with other people. So you may have like organically a call to action, a story of now that really speaks to you that you want to do. And we would strongly encourage you to do that. If you need some help though, you can rely on the calls to action to help develop your story of now that your coach will provide. But you should not feel obliged to use those at all. Then we're going to take 5 minutes. You should review just the moments from your story of self, your relational meeting training, your story of us, thinking about from each of the participants' previous stories that you've heard in this process. And then I would take 5 minutes to silently develop your public narrative. So bring in what you've already got from your story of self, your story of us, and you can use the worksheets on pages 60 to 61 in the worksheet to help you out. And then we'll take probably about 20 or so minutes to do a few rounds of practice. You might get through 3 or 4 rounds of practice in your breakout. So you're going to take 3 minutes to do your story of self, or to do your public narrative, sorry, your linked public narrative. And then you'll get 2 minutes of feedback from your coach and your peers. And then at the end, we should have some time in the breakout for you all to just do a round of appreciations to each other. And then we'll come back and hopefully we'll be able to hear probably about 2 or so stories, linked public narratives from folks, and we'll talk briefly about next steps. So, wow. So we're coming to the end here. I want to give an opportunity to have probably 2 people, as we wrap up, do their linked public narrative, and then we'll do very quickly just the next steps here. So let me see. Xander, do you have somebody that you would like to invite to do a linked public narrative?
We didn't talk about this, and we did have 2 people that shared very strong ones. If they feel compelled, they can jump on now.
Okay.
Yay, Ting!
That's
All right, round of applause for Ting, everybody. Round of applause.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay, I did this once and hopefully I can manage to do it again. Okay, so it was a Friday night. It was around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I was just getting ready for bed. And I'd been thinking about something all day. And I said to my husband, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And so I went onto my phone and I started typing a letter to my boss and to the team at HR. And this is how the letter ended. I'm feeling compelled deeply to spend my time and energy joining the struggle against the climate crisis. I believe in the coming years, we will all have some role to play. And I hope that, insert company name here, gives some thought to small changes it can make to make its role a positive one for its employees and the planet. Happy Earth Day, Ting. And that was when I quit my job in 2022. And I really started getting more involved in my work with CCAN. And we soon formed Nova New Leaf, which is our Northern Virginia chapter. I very quickly realized even before quitting my job, that doing this work together is so much better than doing it apart. It's not just more effective, but it feels a whole lot better to be in community with other people who share your values and who really give a darn about this world and this work, and can really take an active stand in building the world we want. And so with Nova New Leaf, we are working on 2 campaigns to do that. We have the electrification campaign, which is working on decarbonizing, lowering emissions through moving fossil fuel powered machines in all of our lives over to electric versions of those machines. And we have the Reconnection campaign, which is all about connecting to green spaces and caring for those green spaces. And what's really beautiful about our group is that we all have contributions to make and that we all can work together. And I know that everybody here knows what it feels like to feel afraid and to feel powerless and to feel nervous, like I felt when I was angstily wondering whether I should write that resignation letter late at night. But it feels so much better to act, and it feels so much better to do it together. So I hope you will join me. Thanks for the applause.
Thank you so much, Ting. That's really, 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 really great. There's clear elements of the story of self, story of us that you're pulling together, and the story of now. The quick 30 seconds is I would invite you to pull in the specific stories, right? Like when you're feeling that shared powerlessness, like the shared challenge with the us, even if it's just referencing, Hadley said this, and it felt like I really connected in that moment. Richard said that, right? Like, so I would just pull in those story elements, but you've got a really, really great thing there. So thank you, Tink, for sharing. I think for just one more person, we might just go 2 minutes over. If one more person would like to share, I'm looking at you facilitators, if there is somebody that you would like to invite.
Well, we had a few people do a great job, but it's up to them. They want to move on to the big stage,
I'm gonna have to hit you up one-on-one, I guess, Pam, to hear this public narrative, because okay, great. Well, I would like to invite Richard then to share your public narrative, and then we'll round it out with our next steps.
It's like 7:59, man. All right. The speed dating version.
You're okay. If are folks okay taking an extra 5 minutes? Okay, we'll wrap it up at 8:05.
Nice. Okay.
Richard, take your 3 minutes, my friend.
It's like a pale version of Ting's in some ways, but so I was sitting around the table with my wife, and we were talking about my son's education. He is 13, and he's probably 12 at the time, and we have this college plan for him that we were talking about. And I said at some point, do we really think he should go to college? Do we want to think that's a good idea? Which her jaw kind of dropped, because I work in education. I work with community college. My job is to really kind of support first generation, students of color to go to college, because it's transformative. Education is transformative, and she just couldn't believe I was saying this, especially in regards to my son. And I said, well, I've been thinking about climate change. I've been working in this field, and there's really not a lot happening. We're preparing a lot of students for a future that is not going to exist. And do we really want to pay a college to send our students for 4 years, or however long he's going to go to college, for a future that we're not going to see because of climate change? So that motivated me to really try to work with my organization to say, hey, look, this is a really important issue. It's an important issue affecting students. We're thinking about their futures. We've got to do something about climate change. And it was just pretending like it wasn't happening. It was really kind of putting on blinders, and we can't really think about that right now. And it's like, well, it's everything. You can't not think about it. You can't deny it, right? And it was really frustrating. I couldn't pretend this was not happening. I couldn't go out to colleges and talk about this stuff really and really lie, right? Because what I knew was coming, was already happening. Hurricanes were hitting colleges, wildfires were closing down colleges, right? Like it was happening. So I quit, like Ting. I didn't write a nice letter though. I just quit. And I'd been working with CCAN, and what was really great is I was kind of having some level of despair, right? I was kind of reading these books. It was all bad news. Nothing. It was before the IRA and any kind of significant legislation, and nothing was happening, right? But I felt when I would, volunteer for CCAN and do work on, kind of against the Mountain Valley Pipeline, talking to legislators, I really felt part of I felt like empowered, right? I felt like stuff was actually happening, and there were we were getting some significant wins, right? With this kind of collective action. And so, I kind of really started to think about how this community was really important. It's really important to kind of join together. Your actions together are much more impactful than just kind of flailing on your own, right, and just despairing. And so, becoming part of this kind of community of action was really kind of inspiring for me. And, I think about where we live here in Richmond, Virginia. We have a climate emergency declaration, right? We have a green, city plan for the next, several decades, but we're still building pipelines, right? We're still building gas plants over in Chesterfield County, right? And so we really need everyone to kind of pitch in now to, think about kind of what they want to do, because there's things that you can do. You can call your legislator, you can canvas, you can just, kind of support in whatever way you can, but really kind of taking some kind of action really feels good. And you feel connected to kind of making a difference. It's kind of a fight against despair. And so, we're having a CCAN meeting every month. So, can join and kind of find your fit, like I did, kind of find out where you belong, what you can do, and kind of get connected. So you're not just either trying to not think about it not happening or despairing about it, kind of what's happening, and actually take some kind of action.
Hey, Richard. Thank you so much. So Richard, great piece there. Great story, public narrative. And one thing I would encourage folks, as you're thinking about who you're speaking to, whether it's one-on-one with somebody, or you're maybe talking in front of your church, or to your a community group, is really thinking about narrowing to as much as you can your ask in the story of now. And I love that Richard came around to come to the public meeting, and don't hide behind the ball. Be really like, hey, you want to make a difference? We need to see you at this meeting. This is where you're going to find out about the opportunities to get involved and to sign up to volunteer. So being really, really direct and clear that this is the way. This is the way you got to do it. I just want to say it has been such a pleasure spending the month with you all. I think we have spent about almost 6 hours this entire month together, and you all have put in a bunch of additional time into reading and doing some thinking. And I know that because I get emails from some of you for feedback on things, which is great. So I just appreciate you all spending the time doing all this. So there's 3 things that are next here. One is just you should do a one-on-one with your organizer if you have not done so already. And this is an opportunity for you to be saying like, hey, I want to up my investment. I want to up my engagement. I want to take on a leadership role, and I want to figure out what's both strategic and meaningful to me. So let's talk about it. So you should do that as soon as possible. And just the second thing is, I think, identifying as a part of the conversation with the organizer, identifying ways that you can start actually practicing your public narrative. So I know that, for example, we've had a few of you from the Virginia side reach out and be like, hey, I'm doing it at the LTE. I want to be talking about the building of smart cities and protecting the investment in that. And I've seen some great narrative pieces included in the LTEs. You might want to be really leaning into doing lobbying this session, as Richard was talking about. And so you want to be maybe a lobby captain. You want to play a leadership role in facilitating meetings and getting other people prepped to share their story about how these big pieces of legislation are really important to them. And then the last thing is on November 16th, and we'll include a link in the follow-up email that we send out probably tomorrow. But there's going to be a power hour, new membership orientation on November 16th from 7 to 8 p.m. So I would love for everybody to recruit one person who is not involved in CCAN already to come to that power hour and you should use your methods of connection and persuasion that you have learned from this public narrative and relational meeting training to do that. No, not persuasion. This is deep connection. So no, this is not persuading. This is about motivating people to get involved. So just one person. Can I get folks to raise their hands if that's something that they feel like they can do? Get one person on November 16th. Great. Awesome. All right. I know we kept you late. I'm going to stay on for a few extra minutes if folks have questions or things that they would like to talk about, but thank you all so much. This has been wonderful to be building community with you all. And we look forward to continuing to build our teams of people with you over the next couple of months. So thank you.
And to answer Mary Jo's question, yes, the Slack will still be open.
Yes, Slack will still be open. Yes. Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody. I'll stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has anything you want to talk about.
Thank you.